Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen Rx. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And today is a special little segment. I don't know, new type of episode. I feel like I'm always talking about new things going on this podcast, but I wanted to do like a little grab bag episode. I've been doing a lot of Dear Evergreen, a lot of kind of Ask Me Anything episodes, answering longer form questions. But today I thought, let's just do like a grab bag of shorter, simpler, quicker questions. They're kind of all surrounding relationships, friendships in particular, but I think it can apply to both romantic relationships and friendships. So I've got like 5 questions I'm going to just rapid fire go through today. Yeah. If you guys have an idea for a name to call these episodes, I'm just referring to them in my own head as grab bag, but I don't know. I like giving things cute little names, and I don't know what to call this. So let me know. So if any of you guys are new here, just go back to one of my other episodes. This is my disclaimer. You can scroll to the bottom of this description on this episode for my little disclaimer, but essentially this isn't therapy, and I don't know everything, and I will say some wrong things, and I don't know everything about your life and your situation or what applies and is best for you. That's the whole point of the Evergreen Rx. It's that these things are personal. We can't give prescriptive 100% advice that would apply to everyone listening on the whole World Wide Web. That's kind of the pain point that I saw about the internet and about talking about mental health related things, psychology, therapists on the online, or anybody kind of giving advice or taking up a role in the wellness space, is that sometimes it gets so dogmatic what people are saying, and none of us have the answers. None of us have the answer for you specifically either. So that's, I don't want to contribute to all that noise. I know I am in some ways, but I'm hoping it's more permissive, more inspirational, more just like things to chew on, things to think about. So anyway, like I said, I've got 5 questions today, so let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, how do you know when it's time to walk away from someone? God, if you only knew how much of the wrong person in some ways I am to ask this. But how do you know when it's time to walk away from someone? I'm thinking romantic. I'm also thinking friendship, and I feel like my answer applies pretty much the same, because when you have a relationship with someone, you do have some kind of commitment to them. The amount of commitment varies and how much it seems like you maybe kind of owe the relationship, but I think that there is a commitment there. And in this era of ghosting and leaving people on red and things like that, I don't know, I think we can lean a little bit too hard into like, these are my boundaries and I don't want to respond and I don't want to deal with this and I don't like confrontation and blah, blah, blah. But then I don't know if we're holding up our end of the bargain sometimes with ending a relationship or walking away from someone that isn't right for us. But I think there's a couple of pieces with this. So one is a gut check, really, like as simple as it can get. What is the gut check? I mean, if you're asking yourself this question, is it time to walk away? That can be kind of an interesting, initial clue into maybe it is, because you're thinking that way. Sometimes we can have patterns like as individuals where we're more prone to wanting to walk away or to flee. So if that's your pattern, notice it, that, it might just be that same thing inside of you that's like, oh, this isn't, going exactly how I thought, or maybe this person hurt me or upset me, or I'm feeling like we're getting too close and that scares me. And typically I like to run when this happens. That's a little bit of a different story, and there's maybe some attachment work or things to be done there. But in general, gut checking, like, do I have this nagging little voice in the back of my head that's like, I don't think this is right for me. I don't think this relationship is serving me. What does it feel like when I'm around this person? That's such a good question to ask yourself. It's like, how do I feel right before I see this person, then when I'm with them, and then right after they leave? And that might be that you feel great and then you see them and you're all anxious and your stomach's in knots and you're overthinking things and you feel confused. That can be another feeling. And then as soon as they're gone, there's like this sense of relief and you feel fine. Or maybe as soon as they're gone, you feel really drained and exhausted. So all of that is part of the gut check on what is it actually like when I'm with this person, and does the good outweigh the bad? Because relationships are going to be hard sometimes, and we are going to feel anxious, or we are going to feel drained, or we might be a little bit out of step. But if it's more often than not, that's important. Then talking about them or thinking about them in a way that isn't aligned with your values, or maybe you notice that there's something about your authentic expression or your values that you have to suppress in order to be in a relationship with them. Maybe you feel like you can't be super honest, or you have to behave in a certain way for them to be happy with you, or to not get frustrated, or just to make it feel smooth and easy. And also when you're talking about them to others, like, are you talking about them in a really rude or disparaging way? Are you at that point where you're so angry that you're saying bad things about them, that you're globalizing, how they're the worst person ever? Or are you in a space where you're harboring a lot of resentment towards them? Because that's not serving you and it's not serving them. I mean, even if this person is like quote unquote toxic, it's still not serving them if you are staying in a relationship with a lot of resentment, because they're going to pick up on that, and it's not fair to anybody involved. And then if you've had a conversation with them and nothing is changing, I think this is the biggest piece. Have a conversation with them first. If it feels safe, there maybe are situations where it's really not safe. If there's any abuse, verbal, physical, sexual abuse, don't have a conversation. Just get the fuck out if you can. But if you are in just one of those relationships that maybe feels like it's run its course, or you just don't feel so good around this person anymore, see if you can talk to them about what you're noticing. If there's some, things that they're saying or behaviors that they're doing that really rub you the wrong way and upset you, see if you can let them know and give them an opportunity to change, or to have like a back and forth dialogue about it. And, maybe you have one or two conversations. I don't think it has to be a one and done. But if we're on the 10th, if we're on the 5th, 6th, 7th, then it might be time to just step away and let that one go, because we can't change people. We wouldn't want somebody trying to change us constantly to be in relationship with them. And even if the person is saying that they really want to do it, they really care, or they totally get it, they're so grateful for the feedback, if the words don't line up with actions, then that's kind of what we need to know. And that can be a really good time to walk away. Okay, so question number 2. And we've got our next customer. How do I stop overanalyzing every text I send to someone I like? Girl. I think this one is so funny, because as someone that has not had to be in the dating world for a while now, which sounds like such a pick me, like, I haven't had to date for so long. I've been in a relationship. But I don't mean it that way. I just mean like, I just haven't had to date. But I have made friends, and I definitely get the feeling of like overanalyzing texting a new friend. And, when you're texting, if you're texting too much, what you're saying, like, that same nervous energy, is definitely present. And I do think it's funny how much people analyze and index on text, because my first thought is like, how thin are the margins, girl? whether you're getting to know someone romantically or not, are we one text away from them just being like, no? And I actually kind of think in some ways we are. I've definitely seen that reflected in people that are on like the receiving end of the text messages, when you're in this back and forth with someone, that there can be this really high bar. Like, oh, they just said this thing and it's like kind of weird, or they texted me 3 times in a row. And I don't know if I'm into that. And it's like, oh my God, why the fuck is the bar so high? But despite that being, I think, somewhat true, and I can understand that in this new like digital world, like there is this whole language and etiquette to texting, and we do get to know somewhat about someone through the way they communicate over the phone. We don't get to know everything, and so remind yourself, if you're overanalyzing your text, that if the margin is so thin that you could text, one too many times or too soon or whatever, and that's going to like make or break the relationship, I don't know if that's the relationship for you. Kind of along those same lines, or what version of yourself are you trying to sell? What are you overanalyzing the text for? Are you trying to come across some way, some cool person, like you're trying to come off super like laissez-faire and laid back, and I don't even text back for 24 hours, when normally you're the kind of person that's like immediately getting back to someone. Seeing if you're like really trying to mold yourself, because that's ultimately not going to work out. If you sell this one facade, this one version of you that's not actually who you are, then when you're really hanging out with this person and you're not over text and they get to know who you are, they're going to find out anyway. And, maybe they won't like it and that will hurt, but you could have saved yourself a lot of time by just going in authentic from the beginning. And also to remember what you can control and what you can't. I think sometimes that is the tendency with over analysis of text. I know I definitely do this, where, if I could just say something just the right way, then maybe I'll get the answer that I wanted. Or, maybe they won't be mad, or maybe they'll think I'm just so amazing and hilarious and lovely, and they just want to spend every hour with me. We can get into that mindset, especially with like the timing of text too. Like, I'm going to play this game back and forth. He didn't text me for 2 hours. I'm not going to text back for 3 or whatever. Or maybe if I send this second text, because I haven't heard from him in 2 days, if I send the second text like right at, after work, right as I know he'd be going home and probably checking his phone before picking his music in the car, maybe if I can do it right then, he'll respond. Yeah, probably not something we can control or accurately predict or manipulate to the way that we want. So just reminding yourself of that. How do I want to show up versus how are they showing up? What is aligned for me as a person, my intentions, just who I am, and can I do this for me? Can I respond? Can I relax some of the overanalysis and the anxiety about it and just be natural and flow with it and trust that the person will either resonate with it or not? And if they don't, then thank you, next. Like, I'm good. It's fine, because I know I'm showing up the way that I want to in relationships. Okay. Bye. Thanks for your question. Next customer. What's the best way to reconnect with an old friend without it feeling awkward? I liked this one because I actually recently reconnected with 2 old friends from high school, and we got together over the holidays, and it was really sweet, and it was nice to reconnect. And it's so weird, having this person that you knew so well when you're like 16 then be in front of you and be like 26-year-old and you're like, what do you do for a living? Like it's kind of interesting. But it's also so sweet and lovely. And I know when people have reached out to me to reconnect, or I've reached out to others, it always feels really great. So first off, remembering that it feels really nice for someone to reconnect with you. And the assumption would be that in return, whoever you're wanting to connect with would feel really flattered and think it's really sweet. But I think if something happened to cause the disconnect, address it. Just address it. Do them a favor and just address the elephant in the room. If there was a falling out, if there was, a argument, or somebody got a partner and they drifted away, or somebody moved and it got really contentious or something, address it. Say, hey, I know, this blah, 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 this happened. I would love to talk to you about it. I would love to be able to reconnect. Like, you can just be so direct. I would love to reconnect. And if we need to talk about it, let's talk about it, or we can turn a new leaf. I'm good with whatever you're good with. So just giving the opportunity for the conversation. It might just be water under the bridge. They might be ready to move on. You're ready to move on, and great. But I think sometimes it can be less enticing to take that invitation if we're sitting on the other side thinking like, why is this person texting me or calling me like nothing happened? And acting like, we talked last week, even though it's been 5 years and we had this big blow up or something. So if there is something that happened, starting there and addressing it, and also allowing them to be where they're at and not taking it personally. Whether or not something happened, maybe they want to connect, maybe they don't, for whatever reason. And that can hurt, especially when you're vulnerable and you put yourself on the line and maybe you're excited to talk to them again. But, we're in different stages. And if you haven't spoken to this person or interacted with them in a long time, then you really don't know what stage of life they're at and how much they've changed, or whatever personal reasons they may have for not wanting to re-spark the relationship. But just allowing them to be in that place and not letting it take away from your kind gesture, from your brave step towards them. Again, it's kind of like with the previous question, showing up the way that you want to in relationships is such a win. It's not so much about the result, the response that you get. There can be a lot of satisfaction and positive feelings from knowing that you did it, knowing you took that step. And also, it might be awkward. And that's not going to kill you. Awkward is not bad. I really have learned that throughout my time as a therapist, that like there's what we say is awkward silences. You know it. If you're in therapy, you know it. Your therapist sometimes just stops talking and you guys are just looking at each other and it sucks. And you're like, I guess I'm going to have to fill the void and say something. But over time, maybe it's become less awkward. Maybe you've had experiences like that. Or you just realize like, actually, it doesn't kill me to feel uncomfortable. It's okay. Good things come out of discomfort. Yeah, maybe you're catching up with your friend like I was with mine over winter break or holiday. And there's a lull in the conversation and you're all kind of sitting there looking at each other like, this is funny. Like, we are so different than we used to be. And alleviating the pressure to have to fill that silence in that space and just sitting in it. It's part of the human experience. I don't know. Some of you guys aren't going to like that, but I think awkward's okay. And I actually think really good things come from it. And the more we can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think the more powerful we are. Okay, bye. Thanks. I love imagining it like people are coming in and out of my like shop, the Evergreen Apothecary. They're just cycling out and I'm like, all right, that's your time. Go, like, head out. The main episodes are more like full sessions, full appointments. The short questions are more like when you meet with a doctor and they give you like 5 to 10 minutes. Shots fired at the medical community. Anyway, it's like meeting with a therapist versus a psychiatrist. Again, I can't stop with the unnecessary strays hitting the medical community. All right, so next, how do I deal with a friend who drains my energy, but I still care about them? I love this one. I really think this is an underrated question, because I'm sure we all have a friend that we love. They're so special, they're so dear, and they're fucking exhausting to be around. And for whatever reason, it's just you only have so much bandwidth with them. It's like when you start hanging out, it's like an invisible timer starts ticking, and then eventually it's going to go off and you've hit your limit, and it's shorter with this person for whatever reason. But I love what this question is implying, which is like, I still care about them. I don't want to not be friends. I don't seem to have as much to give as in maybe other relationships. So I think there's some really practical things on this, which is setting time limits, setting expectations, and creating an energy bubble, which if you want to know a lot about energy bubbles, energy cleansing, being able to prepare to go into a situation with this friend who's draining, coming out of that situation and being able to recharge. I have a whole episode, mini dose, about cleansing your energy that I'll have linked below. But for the time limits part of it, maybe be strategic about scheduling. This is a little hack of mine that I never seem to use, but I always think about. And it's like picking a coffee shop to meet a friend at that closes earlier. Like maybe you schedule to meet with them at 3 and the coffee shop closes at 5. So you have to leave. That can be really helpful. Doesn't have to be a coffee shop, could be anywhere, but like scheduling 1 or 2 hours before it closes, or having an appointment after where you have to run off, and having something that kind of sets that limit for you. And on the setting expectations piece of it, saying that ahead of time, either via text when you're making the plan or when you first sit down together, being like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. Just so you know, I have the dentist at 3:30, so I'm going to have to head out, 15 minutes before. I've got a timer set on my phone, so we've got all this time, but I'm going to be sure to be conscious of that. Saying it up front is so helpful, so you don't get to that like dreaded time where they're like in the middle of a story and you're like, oh fuck, I have to go, or I've hit my limit, I'm exhausted, and now how do I get out of this? You can just really depersonalize it, lay it out for them, and go with that. Also setting expectations in terms of what you're happy to do and what you're not. Maybe if this person has crossed some boundaries before and you have had a discussion with them about how it's draining for you, you can say something like, I'm so happy. If they're like, can you come over and like paint my whole house with me? And it's like a days long affair. You could say, I would love to help you. I'm so willing to go to Home Depot with you and help you pick out the supplies and get that ready, but I will not be able to join for the whole painting. I have other obligations or whatever. Or just offering an alternative. If somebody's asking more than you think that you have to give, you can always say, oh my gosh, I would so love to see you. How would lunch sound? How would blah, blah, blah. I'm actually, pretty booked up next week. How would 2 weeks from now grabbing a drink sound, or whatever? I think you guys get it, but just setting those expectations, whether it's explicitly and you have a conversation about, the capacity you have with this friend, or a little bit less directly, all the same, being clear about kind of what you can show up for. And then the energy bubble thing, like I said, you can listen to that episode, but really you can just imagine before you go hang out with this friend, placing yourself in a big Glinda bubble and, kind of covering your energy. It's permeable. It's not a firm wall. You're still there. You're going to give and take, but having that little barrier between you and them, especially if they're the thing that's draining about this friend is that they're really energetic, or maybe they're highly emotional, or maybe they can tend to be a little bit more tangential. Their focus kind of goes all over the place. Just setting that little barrier between like what's theirs and what's yours, and letting there be some space so you don't have to take all of that on for them, but you can kind of leave it in their court. And then last question, which I thought was kind of a fun one. It's more directed at me personally, and it's, have you ever misjudged someone? And I knew I had to answer this when I read it, because I was like, yes, always, it seems. Basically, by misjudged, it's like, did you think someone was going to be fantastic and they turned out really toxic? Or did you think someone was going to be the worst and you actually think that they're wonderful? Yes, all of the above. I think I'm pretty discerning when it comes to people, but I also like to give a lot of chances. I also like to be proven wrong. I like to see the best in people. I also can sometimes rationalize for myself someone's behavior through understanding maybe the roots of where it comes from. Like, oh, I know that they're like not the most considerate, but you know, they have this really hard thing going on in their life, or you know, they weren't really taught to do anything different because their parents were super absent or whatever. I have a bad habit of making some excuses in that way. Not that they're excuses, but it does kind of cause me to go blind a little bit to things that don't work for me. And also, once someone, I would say I'm discerning up until the point that someone earns my loyalty in a way. I am a Taurus. I'm a Taurus sun. And so if someone does kind of get in under the gates, and I develop a relationship with them and I care about them and I know them, then we're a little bit more in trouble, because then, you know, my loyalty is just there, and I want to give people chances, and I want to be forgiving and be welcoming and kind. You know, that comes from all my own shit too. I want to make sure that people have chances to change, to grow, to learn, and, you know, for relationships to evolve. But yeah, sometimes that leads me to staying in relationships that actually I misjudged and they really don't work for me. But I guess we can say on the other side of the coin, I can be proven wrong sometimes with people, and I'm happy to have that happen. And I think another piece with this is that I've also learned that it's okay to have a personal opinion about someone. Maybe I, quote, misjudged someone because I don't like the person that a bunch of people in my friend group seem to really like, or we just don't get along, we don't gel. And that can just be true. Like, I can just have that personal opinion. I don't have to make it, you know, that this other person's a villain, they're awful, they have all these horrible qualities, they're, you know, a narcissist and da 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 da. I don't have to do that to just be like, I don't really like them. I don't really want to spend so much time with them. I don't want to be one-on-one with them. You know, that's also okay. So sometimes it can feel like we're misjudging someone because of what the other people around us seem to think, but we also can have our own experience. You know, you might like someone that other people in your life don't like. So it can go in the reverse, and that's okay. That's why we all have different friends, because different people vibe with some people and not with others. So anyway, that was fun. I liked that. I hope you liked it. If you did, let me know. If you want one of your questions to be featured in the next episode, please email me at theevergreenrx@gmail.com, or give me a call or text at 512-655-9888. I would love to hear from you. If you leave me a voicemail, tell me if I can include it in an episode so we can hear your lovely little voice. And yeah, let me know what you think about my answers particularly, I want to know, have you misjudged people? Do you have like a specific example or story where like you and your best friend now were like mortal enemies in the past, and how did you discover that you actually got along? And I love to hear it. I think that stuff is really fun, because people always have the opportunity to surprise us, for better and for worse. But yeah, that's it. We're gonna just close it out. Shop's closed, doors locked, and I will see you next Wednesday. Please follow along so that you never miss a new episode.